Hi, everybody. I am Anita Bromberg, president of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation. You can find us on our website, caef.ca. And I'm pleased to be here today to launch a new project to bring you into the conversation to understand the urgency around anti-Semitism, but more importantly, to understand the importance of standing up for your Jewish heritage, to be proud and loud as Jews. And to do that, to begin a conversation, we're very pleased to invite you to listen in to a presentation by Rabbi Shlomo Gemara of Toronto, a respected educator, someone who I've enjoyed hearing many times. So we're very pleased to launch the project with Rabbi Gemara, who I'm going to turn the camera over to now. Thank you for attending, and we hope to hear more from you as we go forward.
Thank you, Anita. It's a great honor for me to appear here. I have to tell you a story that happened to me this week, and that's why when Jeff Dorfman asked me to participate, I said right away, yes, with no hesitation. Well, after everything that is happening in Gaza, I'm in touch with many of my students, and because I came from Israel about 20 years ago, I consider to be an expert to the Middle East. And for the first time in many, many years, some of my students said, we find it very, very difficult to see children, civilians, are being killed in Gaza in numbers which exceed the numbers in the Israeli side. And we want to hear the Palestinian narrative. It's the first time that happened to me here in Canada. And I understood that something is going on. And I asked them, what happened? What happened? And they told me that they are in the social media, something that was completely foreign to me. And listen, I'm using, Gmail, and here and there I read about Twitter, but I did not know anything about it. And to my amazement, when I wanted to learn what's going on, I found that the social media is tainted with anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, anti-Semite comment in a way that I couldn't even dream of. Listen, we know that there is anti-Semitism. We know that not everyone likes Israel. But if the social media is a forefront, let me tell you, like they use all the ammunition, all the weapons against Israel in an unbelievable way. And the rule is very, very simple. If you fire enough, if you shoot enough, eventually you are going to hit an innocent person, someone that doesn't know much about the Middle East, and you might affect his opinions. And that's exactly what happened to our students, to our boys and girls. They are in the social media and they are bombarded with a propaganda which is anti-Israel, showing the Palestinian as the underdog, and they are influenced. They have a wonderful heart, they care about the world, and they find it very, very difficult to see how Israel is bombing the poor Palestinians. Well, as we are going to discuss later, the problem is that they don't understand what's going on in the Middle East. The Middle East is a very complicated place. For 150 years, the powers of the time, if it was Britain, if it was the Ottoman Empire, if it was today the UN, they tried to find a kind of solution to a long time tension. It did not start yesterday. It did not start last week. This is going at least for 150 years when we talk about the process that led to the establishment of Medinat Israel, of Israel. But the history of the Middle East is much longer, and we are going to discuss it. And it sits there in the heart of the tension. So for the first time, usually I have to learn, I have to prepare my lesson, my sermons. I went into the war zone. This is not the first time. I was a soldier in the first Lebanon war, but this is a completely different war. And I wanted to see it from very close distance. I was shocked, but then I started to analyze what I see. I wanted to understand the information, to collect the data. And it's going more or less like this. 70%, if it's Twitter, if it's Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, they are not interested to hear you. They are anti-Semites, or they don't think that Israel have any right to exist. There is no point even to start negotiating with them. They are brainwashed. They don't want to hear anything. And you know what? We have to face the fact that unfortunately, too many people on the globe don't like us. But Twitter, social media is not the place where to fight them. If you don't want to listen, you are not going to win. If someone doesn't want to listen to you, you are not going to win his heart, period. What was really interesting is that we have about 30% or so people who are not anti-Semites, or at least they declare they are not. But when I asked few of them, tell me what happened in 67? And they said, oh, 67, Israel occupied the territories. I said, okay, but let me ask you something. Why Israel is occupied the territories? Why they didn't do it in 66 or 65? I don't know. And this I don't know represent, as I said, about 90% of the 30% people that are not anti-Semites. There is a terrible lack of knowledge. And this lack of knowledge is not only for non-Jews, it's sometimes our own children. They don't know. No one taught them. And even if they know something about the Middle East, because they visited Israel, they heard something in the school, they really don't know the facts, and the facts are complicated. And if you don't know them, it's very easy to distort the picture completely. This was one lesson that I learned. Facts, people don't know the facts. People don't know the timeline. People don't know history. People don't know the history of Israel. Some of them don't know even the history of their own nation. They don't know what happened 2,000 years ago when all the Jews were expelled from Israel. I'm going to discuss it in a second. The other 3% or so are people who actually know the details. But I asked them, okay, you know what? Let's imagine that you are Netanyahu, you are the prime minister. And I have a simple question to you. Tell me what other countries are doing in this situation. Give me one example of one country that is being bombarded on a daily basis, a sovereign country, a democracy, and I would love to learn how they deal with the situation. Can you give me any example? Silent. There is no example. Israel is the only country in the world that daily, some of their citizens are not sure that they will wake up and go to sleep. That's unheard. And when I asked these people, what would you do in a situation like this, when your children are in danger, when you are the sovereign, you have the duty to protect the life of your citizen. What would you do? Silent. People don't know, and rightfully so, because they cannot take any model, existing model, and to adapt it to what happened in Israel. So let's summarize it. We have in the social media about 70% people who are just don't want to listen to you, and there is no point to argue with them. The other one don't know the facts, and the one who knows the facts have a serious difficulty how to deal with a situation like this. I believe that the most important ammunition against anti-Semitism, against anti-Israel, against anti-Zionism is to learn the facts. I call upon all Jewish schools teach your students the history of our nation and the history of Medinat Israel. This by itself will at least solve the problem for us. People will be more educated and able to deal with lots of lies, half-truth that are sweeping the internet. That's very, very important, number one. Number two, as I see it, I think that we here, especially in America, enjoyed, thank God, many, many years of quiet prosperity. And it's very hard for Jews to believe that someone hates them or don't like them. You don't see it on a daily basis. You go to work, you go on the street, and everything is really nice. I love to be in Canada. Nevertheless, once in 100, 200 years, a big wave of anti-Semitism raised its head. And we have to know it. We have to be aware of it, and we should not lose our skills of survival. And not knowing our history is losing our skills of survival. That's my opinion. That's why it's so, so important to learn history. You know, Churchill once said that the only thing that we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. And this is so true about us, the Jews. We sometimes refuse to accept the fact that there are people who want to destroy us. And again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that everyone around us, I don't like to be paranoid and to think that everyone is looking to take my life. Not at all. This is not the situation. But there are people, there are nations that say clearly their purpose is to annihilate the Jewish people, and we have to be aware of it. Understanding that will explain many, many things that are happening in the Middle East. Some want to see the clash between Hamas and Israel as something that has to do with real estate, with the land. If you really learn the history of the Middle East, you are going to realize very, very soon that this is not the issue. It's not about real estate. It's about the ownership, the destiny of the people who live here. You don't have to go far. Everyone who is going to read, for example, the mission statement of the Hamas will realize that the issue is not Gaza. The issue is not Jerusalem. The issue is whether Israel had the right to exist or not. That's in their mission statement. It's there. It's not something that I will tell you. Go and read it. In other words, until Israel is going to be somewhere else, not in the Middle East, not where it is today, they are not going to be happy. And this obviously drives the waves of terrorism from time to time, because they are patient and they believe that if they press hard enough, one day they might break the spirit or maybe the power of Israel. And in order to fight it, we have to come with a very strong understanding that Israel is the most important thing that happened in the last 2,000 years to the Jewish people. You know, people talk about colonialism and how the British mandate expelled the Arabs or did not let them to develop. But people cannot remember or don't want to remember how it all started. There was a vibrant Jewish community of millions of people in the area of Israel until the Roman arrived, and we found ourselves all over the globe. The interesting thing is that the people who took over after the Jewish people left their cities and villages forgot to erase and to replace the names of the place. Take, for example, Ramallah. Ramallah sounds so Arabic, but Ramallah comes from the Hebrew city of Ramah, the place of Shmuel HaNavi. Bitil, which is an Arab village, is Beit El. Lydia is Lod. Ramle is Ramle. And guess what? All these places are mentioned already in the Torah. And at the time that Bnei Israel, the Israelites, came from Egypt and entered the land of Canaan, it was there. The Jews lived there for millennia and more. And the Arabs say, oh, we are the indigenous people of the Middle East. This is not true. And the best proof is the names of their villages, which still commemorate the old Hebrew names that the tribes and the Jews after it lived in these very places. And what is amazing about our people is that although they were in Morocco, in Spain, in Russia, in the United States later, in Africa, they always had a dream, and actually more than a dream. They knew that one day they are going to be back in their land. And the most amazing thing was that actually, with all the changing of empires, the Romans, and later Byzantine, and later the Ottomans, and later the British, Israel was not a well-populated place. If, let's say, in the 15th century, you would have like a population of few million people in Israel, forget, Israel will never be established. You cannot just evacuate millions of people from their place. Israel, for 2 millennia, was basically a desert or swamps. Very few people there. Yes, some of them were Arabs. This is something that have to be explained how they arrived to this area. But basically, it was a desert. And the moment political changes in the world enabled Jews to go back to Eretz Israel, they immediately went. Not everyone, this was a big problem, but many of them just carried on the old dream to go back to Eretz Israel. And unfortunately, when all the nation were embarrassed about what happened in the Holocaust, they eventually decided to give this land to the Jewish people. But we have to remember, we are not a nation that was established in the Holocaust. Our roots are going thousands of years before. Our land is our land for thousands of years. For sure, Jews were in Israel way before the Islam even was born. And the Islam arrived with lots of the power of the sword. They are not ashamed of it. They have ideology. But the truth is, the Jews were in Israel long before the people who say that the land belonged to them indeed even arrived to Israel. That's something which is very, very important. And you can read so many newspapers, and some of them are written by scholars. And this fact is missing, the connection between the Jewish people and their land. So I do believe that the more students will understand the connection between the land and the people, the more they are going to be convinced that what happened when the Jewish people of 48 got their Medina, they got Medinat Israel, actually there was the highest act of justice to a nation that was expelled many years ago and never lost the dream to come back. You know, everyone knows the song of Hatikva. What is Hatikva? Od lo avda tikvatenu. We never lost our hope, which is the definition of the Jewish people. They never lost hope. They spoke many languages, they were in many countries, but they never, ever lost the hope to come back to Zion and Jerusalem. So this is highly important to understand that everything started way before the Arabs say that the land belonged to them. One important myth, I believe, is that, and I think that this run all over the internet, and actually many countries and diplomats are saying it, oh, we are not anti-Semites. We are just anti-Zionist. We just reject the idea that Israel is built in a place that belongs to another nation, that they treat a minority like a Class B citizens. Now, I want to say something very, very important. Every sentence that I say, I could develop it to a discussion of more than an hour or hours. It's complicated, rich history, and I don't believe that in a very short time, we can really understand the whole scope of the issue of Israel, of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But one thing which is very, very important is that to understand about anti-Semitism is that the most amazing thing about anti-Semitism is that it's changing all the time. It has like kind of qualities of virus that always like mutate itself, depend on the situation. If it was in Russia, then they were too communist. After the communism, they were too capitalist. Sometimes they are too poor, sometimes they are too rich. Sometimes they have no country, sometimes they have a too big country. There always is a reason not to like the Jews, if not more than that. And therefore, every time in our history that you tackle hatred of Jews, don't look too much to the reason that people say why they don't like the Jews, because it's always changing. The mere fact is that for whatever reason, people don't like the Jews. Many books were written about this phenomenon, which is really very, very ancient. No nation ever suffered from something like this. Many explanations. Many scholars try to understand this phenomenon with no much success, because as I said, it's always very slippery, very changing all the time. You cannot put your finger on something specific. But the interesting thing is that wherever Jews went, whatever the situation was, you always have many people, many societies against them. And therefore, I would tell our students at least, you know, when you hear it's not about Jewish life, it's about Israel, be very careful. Listen, everyone can criticize me, everyone can criticize Israel. I don't think that Israel, everything that Israel is doing is perfect. But I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes, member of my family, I don't agree with what they are doing, but it comes from a place of love, of appreciation. When you love someone, you can criticize it in a productive way, obviously. The hatred that countries, diplomats, societies shows towards Israel is telling us one clear thing. This is not coming from love, appreciation. It comes from pure hatred. What is the reason for the hatred? To be honest with you, I don't care much. I know that as a Jew, I just want to bring blessing to the world, as Jews always did. And for some reason, people don't accept it. They don't like the fact that the Jews have now a country. For generation it was, oh, you have no country, you are just a minority everywhere. Why don't you go to a place that you know all the Jews will be together and you are here and there, Am Eforat ben Kol Ha'amim, as the Haman said. And now that the Jews after such an unbelievable suffering that no nation ever had and survived, and we have our country. So again, it's too much, it's too big, you took too much. There is something beyond the land, beyond the real estate, as I say. It's something very rooted in the soul of too many people, too many religions against the Jewish people. And we just have to recognize it. We just have to recognize it. And, to call a spade, we have to tell people, listen, what you say is not criticism. Suggesting that the Jewish people don't deserve their land, don't deserve to live in peace, is anti-Semitism. This Shabbat, we are going to read about the special, beautiful blessing of the Kohanim. What the blessing culminate with? V'yasem lecha shalom, should give you peace. We are a nation that always seek peace, always. I can tell you one thing. If Israel tomorrow will decide no more weapons, we are not going to fight, I don't think that the Jewish people in Israel will survive 2 or 3 days. If the Arabs tomorrow, the Palestinians will say, enough is enough. Here are our weapons, our guns. We don't want to fight anymore. What will happen next? Let me tell you, there will be peace in 2 days. We seek peace. We don't want to kill one child in Gaza. But when our life are endangered by people who are shooting from buildings of civilians, where they command children and their mothers to stay in the building, what choice do we have? Are we that bad, or we just want to protect our life? This is a very simple answer. We always have to protect our life. We cannot make any mistake, because once we make a mistake, the Jewish nation will disappear. We have to survive. And thank God, we found a country, we found a place that the Jews are building themselves. They contribute so much to the world around them. There is no one technology that is not involved somehow with Israeli technology. I have a sister. She's a doctor in Hadassah, Yerushalayim. I always hear from her how they treat Arabs as Jews in the same place. Sometimes they don't even pay the insurance or things like this. They save Palestinian life because we want to be a source of blessing. But unfortunately, we are not allowed to do it. We have to fight for our life, and we still fight for our life. Tell me if this is not anti-Semitism. In conclusion, I touched upon many issues. I know that each one of them deserve at least half an hour to an hour, sometimes more. And I hope that we will have the opportunity to do it. I hope that people will ask questions. In Leila Seder, in Pesach night, we encourage the children to ask questions. You cannot be engaged in such a magnificent story, a story of faith, of transmitting a faith and tradition with no questions. Questions are important. So I hope that we are going to have the opportunity to raise questions, and even difficult questions, very difficult questions, to answer them and to explain why anti-Semitism has to be defeated, not only for the Jewish people, it's for the benefit of the world. Why anti-Zionism, it's maybe the highest degree of anti-Semitism, and criticizing Israel is not a sin if it comes from a place of love and a will to help, to aid, and to make something good in this world. We are not afraid of criticism. On the contrary, we learn from it. So I want to thank Anita, Andrea, Jeff, everyone who listened to this for the opportunity to talk. I really talk from my heart. I find it very, very difficult these days. I'm sure for our youngsters, like to see what's going on, it is difficult, but I want to encourage everyone. You should know, 200 years ago, no one thought that there will be Jews in Eretz Israel. We are today more than 7 million. We have to be patient, strong, resilient. We will make it. I hope that very, very soon, other people in the world will understand how unique is the Zionist enterprise. And not only they are not going to be against it, they are going to learn from it and to help us to become better. Thank you so very much. And I hope to see you again another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Let me just add our thanks. This is really what we hope to be a first of many wonderful programs, hearing from thought leaders, rabbis, and others like yourself to make us think about the questions that too many young people, I think, and others are just assuming, question that might be, can I be anti-Zionist and still a proud Jew? I think you gave us some thoughts on those kinds of questions, and I think a lot of young people today are struggling with these kinds of issues. So I hope that this is the beginning of many conversations where we can explore those kind of thoughts, and that we can engage young people in having the conversations so that they can think through the process, and I hope end up as strong, committed, proud Jews that are there to serve Am Yisrael. And I think you gave us a wonderful kickoff for this first of many. I encourage anybody that, especially the young people that are going to be hearing this as we send it out into cyber world, we will provide you with contact information. Please send us the questions. And I know, and I'm sure the Rabbi Gemara and the other thought leaders that will join us will be more than happy to engage further with you and explore the important issues of today as we build a strong, proud community. Thank you for joining us today and kicking off this series. Thank you to Jeff Dorfman for helping to organize it, and our executive director, Andrea. We are very excited of where this conversation is going to take us.
Thank you. It was my honor and pleasure. And again, as you said, I think that we have to have a hotline for young people in universities elsewhere that want to ask questions, to welcome them, and we will deal with them. And you know what? Sometimes I find myself in need to learn something that I didn't know. We are not afraid of education. On the contrary, education might be the solution to many of our problems.
Thank you.
Great.
And
Thank you.
a good day to everybody.